Elden Ring is about to get so much bigger. Today, we're going to talk about the first major expansion for the game, Shadow of the Erdtree. Now, after months of leaks and rumors for an upcoming expansion, From Software officially confirmed that Elden Ring will be getting a new batch of content before their next game. In today's video, we're going to go over absolutely everything that we know about the upcoming Elden Ring expansion, including what you can expect from it, when you should expect to get your hands on it, as well as everything new regarding Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. Real quick, guys, I'm giving away a PS5 for 120,000 subscribers if you'd like to enter. It's really easy. All you have to do is subscribe to the channel, comment your Twitter handle, and then tweet me proof that you're subscribed. The winner will be announced at 120k. Now, if you guys didn't know, Shadow of the Erdtree is the first major expansion for Elden Ring, but it hasn't been the first piece of DLC. The game has received a number of major patches, both for stability and content. Many people are aware of some of the technical issues that Elden Ring experienced at launch, most of which have been ironed out by now. And there's also the pretty big PvP update last year that introduced a ton of new elements to the mix, but so far nothing really story driven has been added. That is until now. There have been a number of leaked details hidden within the game files, but nothing concrete, which is why an announcement of an official expansion pack was such a big deal. Now, for those of you that are genuinely wondering why they decided to do an expansion for this game over working on a new game or possibly Elden Ring 2, I know that's likely not going to happen, but I know a lot of people are wondering why an expansion and why not a new From Software game. So let's talk about just how astronomically successful Elden Ring has been, despite the obvious of winning Game of the Year last year. The game launched back in February of 2022 and managed to sell over 13.4 million copies by the end of its first month on the market, making it by far the fastest selling From Software game to date, as well as fastest selling Bandai Namco game ever released. But the insane sales didn't stop there, because over the next 10 months, the game managed to sell over 7 million more copies, officially putting the total number over 20 million by the end of February 2023. To give you some perspective on that, most AAA games don't manage to sell 7 million copies in their entire lifetime, let alone in the months after. The most notable outlier as of recent was Zelda Tears of the Kingdom selling 10 million copies in its first 3 days on the market. But for FromSoft to sell over 13 million units in a month is impressive, but to then keep on going and selling another 7 million after the launch hype has died down is an insane achievement and a massive testament to just how good the game is because of word of mouth is keeping it going. For another little piece of perspective here, Dark Souls 3 sold 10 million copies total, and the entire Souls trilogy is believed to be at around 33 million copies. So the fact that Elden Ring has gotten over 50% of that on its own after a single year on the market is insane. Honestly, I don't think it's a coincidence that From Software announced their 20 million units sold milestone, and then right after that they announced the development of a major expansion. This is also the longest that From Software has ever waited to announce an expansion pack for one of those games, and the timing is certainly a little suspicious in that regard. Now, the development on Shadow of the Erdtree was officially announced on February 28th by From Software, along with some new artwork to go along with it. And just to repeat, that development on the new expansion was announced on the 28th of February. So the expansion is currently in the works, which means its official release date is probably significantly further out than it would have been if this was more of a formal DLC announcement. I do want to point out how out of character it is for From Software, who normally releases a major expansion for their games within a year after launch. The fact that Elden Ring is now over a year old and there's an expansion in development is a pretty drastic change in course, but I guess that could actually have something to do with how massive of a game Elden Ring actually is compared to the other projects. It's also possible that Elden Ring wasn't originally going to have a single player expansion, but the insane success provoked From Software as well as Bandai Namco to put something together. Hey FromSoft, while you're working on Elden Ring, could you just kind of give us Bloodborne Remastered? That'd be really cool. Now, in previous interviews, it's been made clear that both From Software and publisher Bandai Namco want Elden Ring to be a franchise as opposed to a one-off title, which implies that the plans for a sequel have already been discussed internally, but that could also mean that some of the new ideas for the sequel may be getting moved up to fit the current game as DLC. Now, whether or not From Software is going to give us another game in the Elden Ring franchise is kind of a toss-up, but with how successful it is, it would make sense that this game is their new formula outside of their typical formula from Dark Souls and games like that. This was also a massively ambitious project for From Software, so I would not want to be the ones to try to make another game as good, if not better than Elden Ring, as that was kind of a once-in-a-generation type game. But for Tears of the Kingdom to completely change up the formula and make a better Breath of the Wild than Breath of the Wild, then I totally think that From Software could do the same thing to Elden Ring and a possible sequel. Now, it's also possible that the DLC is going to feature content cut from the original experience for one reason or another, so that way that they could still save some of the cool stuff for the sequel game or the next game. The point I'm getting at here is that previous From Software DLCs were developed alongside the base game, while Elden Ring's expansions seem to have been born out of completely new ideas post completion of the base game, which may make it feel like a little different than other DLCs. Granted, it's entirely possible possible I'm just overanalyzing things here, but I do think it's a little bit strange that this is the longest we've waited for a From Software expansion, and it just so happens to be the brand new IP that recently broke a major sales milestone. It seems a little bit too convenient to be a coincidence. Now, as for what we can expect from the upcoming expansion, some internet detectives did a little bit of digging into the artwork that From Software included with the announcement of the expansion's development. As some players have pointed out, the Erdtree in the artwork looks pretty decrepit, implying that the expansion will take place after the base game's main story, as opposed to taking place alongside it like many other RPG expansions. There's also a blonde figure on a horned horse in the artwork that is unanimously believed to be Mikola, who is a background character in the base game, so we'll probably get to learn more about them in this expansion. As for the rest of the expansion's content, there's not a whole lot we can go off of as of right now, but if we look at what previous Souls expansions have done, we could probably expect a new area or two, along with new weapons, enemy types, bosses, all while telling a new bit of story in From Software's signature indirect fashion. Now, one interesting piece of information seems to be that this expansion will release on previous generation versions of the game, which is a bit of a nice surprise. Most major publishers are already starting to leave the Xbox One and PS4 behind for obvious reasons, and there have been a handful of major AAA games that launched on both the 8th and 9th generation consoles, but elected to not release DLC on the former. For example, the upcoming Phantom Liberty expansion will not be released on the PS4 or Xbox One consoles. Insomniac Spider-Man series also shows a bit of favoritism to the PS5 versions of the game. However, it seems that Shadow of the Erdtree will be releasing on the Xbox One, PS4, as well as PC, PS5, and the Xbox Series consoles, which, like I said, is a bit surprising with how big this game is and how many technical issues the 8th gen versions of the game had at launch. Now, as for the game's release date, it's really hard to say. With how late this expansion was announced in Elden Ring's life cycle, you would think that From Software would be eager to get it out the door, but then again, with how well Elden Ring is still selling, despite it being a year old, and how critically acclaimed the game is, the studio probably isn't worried about the game losing relevancy. Their goal is to release the best version possible for gamers that loved Elden Ring. Now, all we got was the development update saying that they were going to be developing the DLC, meaning the content being added to the game could be another 6 to even 12 months away, at the very least. From Software typically doesn't announce things until they're confident in a release window, but then again, with how late this announcement was, they're probably wanted to reassure people that an expansion was in the works in order to quell rumors and give fans some reassurance that more content is on the way. Now, personally, I'm expecting Shadow of the Erdtree to drop sometime in late fall, possibly Q4 or even Q1 of 2024, so it's soon enough to keep capitalizing on the base game success, but not so late that it's going to be competing with games as well as all of the other AAA titles that have people's attentions. We have Starfield in September. There's also going to be Spider-Man 2 that releases in the fall, Assassin's Creed Mirage in October, and so many other games releasing at the end of the year. So that's why I think we're going to have to wait until next year to play Shadow of the Erdtree. Now the question is when is the curtain going to be pulled off of this game so we can see the true scale of the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC? Well, in June, we have a bunch of showcases. PlayStation recently did theirs. It was kind of a miss, despite Spider-Man 2 looking super amazing. There's Summer Games Fest that's going to be taking place on June 8th, and then there's going to be the Xbox Game Showcase on June 11th. Now, as much as I would love From Software to just drop a trailer for Shadow of the Erdtree, I think they're going to utilize the hype of Summer Game Fest and then announce it during that showcase. There's also the fact that Jeff Keighley was the one to showcase Elden Ring to the world whenever it first got revealed, so it totally makes sense that he's going to be the one to do it. Maybe we're going to get it at Summer Game Fest. That is if the expansion is going to be releasing this year, but if it releases next year, then I'm guessing the Game Awards will be the perfect time for them to fully unveil and give us a teaser trailer for Shadow of the Erdtree. With how massive of a game Elden Ring was for the entire industry, winning Game of the Year in 2022, I think From Software is going to go above and beyond to make sure that this expansion is one of the best that we've seen in the history of the franchise, as well as just for modern video games. They have the opportunity to make Elden Ring a lasting franchise, and I think them proving themselves even further with Shadow of the Erdtree is only going to make fans love Elden Ring even more. There's been so many occasions where I've talked to people and they also experienced Elden Ring for the first time, and they weren't exposed to any other Soulsborne games before, myself included, so I really want Elden Ring to knock this expansion out the park. After playing Elden Ring, I have a newfound respect for the developers at From Software, and while we don't know much about the upcoming Elden Ring expansion, the announcement that From Software is working on something new is awesome, and I'm super excited to see what they have in store for us. For those that haven't played many other From Software games, their expansion packs are usually massive, and since Elden Ring is their biggest game to date, we can likely expect something huge once Shadow of the Erdtree is finally released. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section, and tell me one thing you think they could improve on for the base game while you're at it. Elden Ring may be a phenomenal game, but there's always room for improvement. development. And while From Software is probably hard at work on creating new gameplay and story opportunities for this DLC, it's also the perfect opportunity to throw in some quality of life improvements for the base game as well. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel with your notifications turned on, and don't forget to enter the 120,000 subscriber PS5 giveaway. The details are in the pinned comment. And until next time, this has been Wes, and I'll talk to you guys again soon.